Okay, well, this pastor was not feeling good, and he asked me to do this. I prepared this before he started his one on miracles, so it might overlap, but anyway, he will expand on a lot more than what I will tonight. So tonight, I thought we'd look at God's miracles and what role do we play in them, if any. Larry? There we go. Our text for tonight will be in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, and I will have the verses up there for you. Even though there are good lessons in this whole chapter, I'll be skipping some of them to focus on the ones that are relevant to our subject. So, starting at verse 1, it says, "Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha." Well, verse 2 tells us that this was the same Martha and Mary that poured the ointment over Jesus. So the next verses are talking about Jesus. "Therefore, his sister sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Sickness not unto death. This is not the final end, but for the glory of God." We see the beginning of miracles in John 2, where he turned the water into wine, and that's where he started his miracles out. Actually, this is the last one we're going to deal with tonight. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, and when he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Jesus waited 2 more days after hearing that Lazarus was sick. There are several reasons for this delay, which we will come to later in this lesson. Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thither again? Well, the Greek word for of late, means just now. That's what the Greek says. The Jews just now sought to stone thee. The implication is, you just escaped being stoned there. Why would you want to go back there so soon? That's what they were saying. Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? In other words, the day has a definite allotted time. Everything happens on God's timetable. Jesus knew that his time was not yet. He is walking in the light of knowledge and will not stumble in darkness. That's the implication there. Also, Lazarus' death could not take place but for the time appointed by the Father. You know, sometimes we see events that happen that we call miracles, and sometimes the event itself is something that sometimes it can just happen on its own. And sometimes people try to explain away a miracle because it is something that can just happen. That may be so, but the miracle is in God's timing. God causes the event to happen at the precise time needed to become a miracle. I think we've all experienced some of that. There are many examples of that. I'm sure you can think of some, but these are not the only miracles that God does. Verse 11, These things said he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may wake him out of sleep. You know, the word sleep, this word is used for death several times in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament it is used only for believers. The disciples said, Well, if he's just sleeping, he's okay. Howbeit, Jesus spoke of his death. But they thought that he said that he spoke of him just resting in sleep. Then said Jesus unto them, Plainly, Lazarus is dead. This alludes to the omniscience of Jesus, because Jesus already knew that Lazarus was dead. There's no indication of a second message coming that said that he died later, and he knew that. Jesus continues, And I am glad for your sake that I was not there, to the extent ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go on unto him. This is one reason for the delay. There can be no question about the deity of Jesus when he brings life to someone who has been dead for 4 days. Jumping on down to verse 17. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave for 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. Well, for those of you that don't play the horses, that's about 2 miles. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Many of the Jews. This is another reason, I believe, for a 4-day delay. It was Jewish custom at the time to have professional mourners come help the bereaved families mourn for the first 4 days of a funeral service. I think Jesus did not want to get caught up into that, so he waited until the professionals finished their professional crying. This in itself served another purpose. This meant there would be a greater number of witnesses to the miracle that he is going to perform. That way it would be impossible for the Sanhedrin to discredit this last great sign of the Messiah. So if we move on down to verse 23, after Martha wished Jesus had come sooner so Lazarus would not have died, Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus answered her and then asked her the most important question that everyone needs to answer one way or another. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever believeth, or whosoever liveth and believeth in me, shall never die. Believest thou this? All of us here at one time or another heard the equivalent of those words and answered that question. Do you believe this? A simple yes or no answer that determines where you will spend eternity. Those that believe in me shall live. That's doctrinal, dispensational, and prophetic. 2 shortened sentences that says it all. Verse 30, Now Jesus was not yet come unto the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth unto the grave to weep there. It continues that she went to Jesus and fell at his feet weeping. Seems like she was always at his feet when he was around. Then Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her. Now remember, these are the professional mourners that came with her. And when Jesus saw them, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. Jesus groaned in the spirit and was troubled. The Greek word for groaned is an indicator of deep feeling of a distress to the most extreme degree. Actually, the Greek word used here means to snort with anger like a horse, a violent displeasure. It's also translated as snort with disgust. It wasn't that he just groaned, oh, he was disgusted. And said, Where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. And here's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. And it must be understood in this setting. Though it is interpreted by the Jewish spectators there as sympathy, Jesus knew he would presently raise Lazarus, and he does not weep in this deep-seated, most inaudible fashion for Lazarus. That would not harmonize with Jesus' view of death, as he just stated. He weeps over the human unbelief in his ability as a resurrection and a life to deal with the present problem. Remember, his deity was previously affirmed in this chapter. It is now his humanity which we clearly observe in the shedding of these tears. Now we get to the point of this message. Thought I'd never get there, didn't I? So I'm going to read through the next several verses and then come back and analyze them. Then said the Jews, "Behold, how he loved him." And some of them said, "Could not this man have opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died?" Jesus therefore again groaned in himself, cometh to the grave, and it was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. He said, "Take ye away the stone." Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said unto him, "Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said unto her, "Said I not unto thee, that if thou shouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God?" Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I know that thou hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. It was for their benefit. And when he thus had spoken, he cried in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus said unto them, "Loose him and let him go." Okay, let's see what we can learn from all of this. Jesus asked, "Where have you laid him?" Jesus knew where they laid him. He was the creator of the universe. He knew. Then he said, "Take ye away the stone." You guys take away the stone. This brings up another issue. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and you can't improve on the King James verse here. By this time he stinketh. Not only Lazarus, but all the other bodies laid to rest in there too. Then he cried in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." A voice loud enough to raise the dead, right? And many believe, me included, that if he had not called Lazarus by name, all the dead would have come out. Remember this, these are the same lips which called the universe into existence. And he that was dead, came out still bound hand and foot with grave clothes. Jesus said unto them, "Loose him and let him go." So what's my point? Jesus got the people involved. Here's the order of events. Jesus asked them where they had laid him. He knew where he was. Then he told them to remove the stone, and the people moved the stone. The people said, "Lazarus, come forth." Is that what happened? No. And only God can tell someone who is dead for 4 days that stinketh already to come forth. Jesus held the keys of death and Hades, and this also illustrates his conquest over Satan. Jesus then told them to remove the grave clothes. You would think somebody with the power to raise someone who stinketh already could arrange for the grave clothes to fall off at the proper time, but Jesus asked the people to remove them. We do the possible, and God does the impossible. When we become a team. God doesn't sweep the gravel off the pavement out front. Larry does it. God doesn't get us dressed or brush our teeth for us in the morning. We can do that. We can tell someone we meet about the saving blood of Jesus. We do that, or at least we should do that. Then God does what we can't do and convicts that person to believe it and receive eternal life in heaven. When we do our part, the possible, God will do his part, the impossible. And then we become a team. Jesus always worked through his disciples. That includes us. In his first miracle, Jesus had the disciples bring the vessels full of water. He then turned the water into wine. They did the possible, he did the impossible. The feeding of the multitude. Jesus broke the 2 fishes and 5 loaves of bread into enough pieces to feed over 5,000 people. But the disciples distributed the food. And here he said, "Take ye away the stone. You guys do it." And they rolled the stone away. Jesus could have rolled the stone away. He created it in the first place, but he got them involved. Freeing the grave clothes. Like I said before, anybody that can call forth a dead person who has been dead for 4 days and stinketh already could certainly have the grave clothes fall off at the proper time for a great effect. But he had them do it. If we want to see miracles and God do impossible things, we have to get involved and do our part. God is not going to do it for us. However, without God, we can't. And without us, he might not. So what else can we learn from this story? Well, Lazarus went through 4 stages. When brought back to life, Lazarus was defeated. Well, first he was dead. Just like we were at one time, before we were saved, in a matter of speaking, we were dead. When brought back to life, Lazarus was defeated, tangled in his grave clothes, still trapped in his previous state. And like most of us, we are alive and saved, but sometimes we are hindered by our own grave clothes, still wrapped in the wrappings of the world that we were saved out of. And after the grave clothes were removed, Lazarus became dangerous. Dangerous in a sense to the Pharisees. Chapter 12, verse 10 says that they plotted to kill Lazarus. Remember, this happened just before the Passover, and millions of people would be coming into Jerusalem to observe the Passover. Somebody running around telling all these people that Jesus had just brought them back from the dead after 4 days was, in their minds, very dangerous. So they plotted to kill him. People might believe it. There are too many witnesses. We can't have people believing in the truth, so we have to get rid of the evidence. That sounds like today, doesn't it? So I have a question. Are we dangerous for him? Have we removed enough of the world's grave clothes so that he can shine through us? I'm still working on that, by the way. Then after all that, we find Lazarus dining with Jesus. And that's our end goal, to dine with Jesus. You know, I can prove that Jesus was a Baptist. Every time he appeared after his resurrection, he ate something. The point is this. When you pray for something, expect God to do something that you couldn't do on your own. He can open doors that we can't. Then we have to walk through them when they appear. I've seen this happen to people with children who get sick. Instead of taking the child to the doctor, they put them in bed and say they're waiting for God to heal them. Well, even though God could do that, he uses people to do his possible work. That's why he put doctors here. So we do what we can and pray for God to perform the miracle. And then have the faith to expect something to happen. Faith is very important in all this. May not be the way we wanted it, but God will do what's best for us. I could have called this shedding our grave clothes and shining for Jesus, but I think the lesson here is this. If I want to see God perform a miracle, get involved and do the possible. God will then do the impossible. Then get rid of our worldly hang-ups so the world doesn't see grave clothes when they look at us, but can see the glory of Jesus shining through us as our greatest witness. So, boy, I'm early, but that's okay. Any questions? Anybody want to say something? Yeah?
It's
Okay.
not really a question, but according to Jewish tradition, they believe that the spirit of that person lingered around the body for 3 days.
Yeah.
So it was important that Jesus didn't come before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons for that, but so, and that's why the professional mourners went there to help them mourn for that 3 days. And since I got time, you know, saying about he rings a bell or ringing a bell, that came from or he's a dead ringer. They back when they would bury somebody that wasn't dead, because they would exhume the body and they'd find scratches on the inside of the coffin. The guy came back to life. So they started putting a little string out through there and up and hanging on the bell. So if he came to, he could pull that and ring a bell and they'd come dig him out. That's where that saying come from, I've heard. So, anyway. So, any more comments, questions?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
God has shown us in what you presented that if any one of those decisions given to man was undone, Lazarus would not have come to life.
I think so.
Because God said, you do this, you do this, you do
Yeah.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And at any one of those points, they would have said it's too much.
Yes.
Obedience.
Yep.
I
That's
think in every miracle that we see today, somebody, and usually several somebodies, have had to do several different things prior to the miracle.
We do the possible. Somebody has to do that.
We
Yeah.
have to do that.
And like I said,
We
with
always fail in one of them.
yeah, it's like I said before. Without God, we can't do that. But without us, He won't. He won't. So yes, very very true. Anybody else? Yes. No. Okay. I'll. Yeah, just in time. I'll tell you something, since we got lots of time. I'll tell you something about prayer. My grandmother, on my dad's side, died at 108. And she was a devout Christian, and she prayed for everybody. I was at one time, and she was praying, and I think one of her sons said, when she got through, said, Mom, you forgot to pray for that Chinaman over in China, because she prayed for everybody. And I was in those prayers a lot. And I didn't realize it until when she passed away. I felt that she was always praying for me, and things happened for me to the good and all that. And all of a sudden, it was the vacuum. And I realized later it was because that prayer warrior wasn't praying for anymore. So then I had to take over and do it. So yeah, prayers are very important. Well, that's all I got. So we can go home early.